Welcome back to Outside the Box, a podcast where we unpack the impact of business relationships. I'm Vanessa Griffiths,
And I'm Olivia Villalta.
and we are here today to talk about an important day.
International Women's Day.
Yes, International Women's Day is coming up very soon, and Olivia and I are women
In business.
in business. International Women's Day is, I feel like every year since we've started a business, I can't really speak to before that. Olivia and I kind of have a little bit of a sense of dread as International Women's Day approaches, because the emails start coming, the
Events,
invites start
the
getting,
webinars.
the webinars start getting flown around.
It's a busy month. I think our first 2 years in business, we in general just attended everything that we got invited to,
For sure.
which made the month of March very chaotic. Now we are a bit more selective of our,
Yeah,
a bit more mindful of our time.
for sure. For sure.
So
But it's not even the amount of things that happen in International
no,
Women's
no,
Day
no.
that are that weigh heavily on me, at least. I'm
No.
going to speak for myself.
You're speaking for
Because
both of us.
okay. International Women's Day feels like too much work for me, a woman.
Yes.
I am grateful for every opportunity that I have to share my story, to help whoever is listening or watching me or whatever that may be. But I do not want to spend the day that we have, lamenting on how far behind we are. I cannot do it anymore. I refuse to participate in anything related to International Women's Day if it's not about talking about moving the needle forward today. I don't want to talk about how historically terrible it has been to be a woman. I get it. I live it. I know it. Let's talk about solutions. And I probably am not the best person to talk to about solutions. Let's call on the people who are making these decisions that are putting us at disadvantages and get them involved. I think International Women's Day should be reframed as a call out to
The people.
yeah, but like flame them in their face. I don't want to just get in a circle of women and talk about how much it sucks anymore.
So I was asked to speak on a panel for International Women's Day, and I specifically had a Zoom call ahead of time to explain and give them warning, just so they know how I plan on approaching it and my thoughts on International Women's Day events, which ended up going very well, and they were very receptive to it. But what I explained was that I don't think it's helpful for men to spend the month of March going to conferences and events and meeting with mentors and getting advice that's going to actually push their business forward when we're spending a month listening to all of the challenges that people have, that we know are challenges. And it's not to say that the challenges shouldn't be addressed. And we can chat about some challenges that we've had being women briefly, while also hopefully giving some advice on how we've gotten past those and how we've moved our business forward despite the challenges that we've come into. But in the month that men are spending learning and pushing their business forward, we should be attending events and being part of conversations or encouraging conversations that are actually pushing women forward. And whether that is we've just been a little bit poisoned by some events that we've gone to where we've actually spent 8 hours in a day where there's the most inspirational women right in front of us.
Incredible women.
And the questions being asked to them are I want to know what have you done from a finance perspective, a marketing perspective, investor meeting,
tactical information,
practical solutions of
yes.
What have you actually done that I can go and implement tomorrow, or I can implement into our long-term vision and strategy that's going to actually be helpful. Because I think we just end up walking away feeling a bit discouraged of where women are at with nothing concrete to like take away from it. Um, which I feel very bad about saying because I know the intention of people planning these events are like obviously have great intent.
Yeah.
And we do need to talk about challenges that people have, but I think we need to talk about the challenges to the people that are putting those barriers up rather than just the women that are facing the challenges, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I think there's a spectrum of like International Women's Day is supposed to be many things, and it can be
Celebrating.
many things. It can be celebratory, it can be a rallying cry, it can be whatever people want it to be. I think the we get into a really sticky situation when it's like neither celebratory or a rallying cry. It's just like, let's hash out these issues again.
Mhm.
Like, we don't need to be reminded again how few women get Series A funding. We don't need to be reminded again how few women are in the C-suite. We don't need to be reminded, like, we know.
I think some people need to be reminded of that.
It's not the women that are there.
Yeah.
It's not the women who decided to start their own businesses and made it really far in their own careers and then left because they were, not advancing anymore
Mhm.
or not getting paid as much as their counterparts or seeing that they wanted to have families and didn't understand how they could do it without doing something as drastic as quitting their job and starting their own business. It's crazy that we're spending time rehashing it to people who are living it. And I think that there is just make it a celebration because everybody we can celebrate. There's a lot for people to celebrate, and that is okay. Or make it a rallying cry and let's just rage, and that's fine. But I hate being invited to these things under the guise of, like, it being this communal, celebratory, whatever it is, and we get there and it's just, this is why it's hard for all of us,
Mhm.
and not a man in the room to sometimes there are men in the room, bless their souls, but they're not the most helpful.
Definitely. It's
Eh,
becomes a little bit dreadful. I
it
think
does.
after going to a lot of those types of events, um, I think we are in a like bubble of International Women's Day being specifically about women in business, and even more specifically, women in entrepreneurship, because that's just the space that we live in. So I can't overly speak to what International Women's Day is
True.
outside of business because honestly, I think before this,
It
I don't
wasn't on your
even
radar?
it wasn't really on my radar.
Did
Aside
any
from like a
companies
social media, like
True.
re-sharing things on your story, that type of thing
Yeah, but even that, it's like I think I saw it most on LinkedIn, which means it was like
still
I
just
think I
means.
always saw it in a corporate context,
Mhm.
which, like, seeing anything repeatedly in a corporate context tends you can assume that by the time corporations start acknowledging or celebrating something, that it is very far removed from its original meaning.
Mhm.
That is just what it is.
Yep.
Um, and so it's like you said, the our perception of what that is probably very jaded and, like, probably very far removed from what International Women's Day started out as, because I believe it started in the early 1900s when, like, there was no raising of funds to worry about. It was like bank accounts. "Can we
Mhm.
have bank accounts, please?"
Mhm.
So I get that, and I also understand the need for the rallying cry and pushing forward issues, but if it's not in a structured way to the people and, like, I don't know. I don't wanna say that it's for nothing because there's also something very cathartic, I'm sure, about sharing your story and having other people validate their
Yeah.
experience or your experience with their shared experiences.
Mhm. I think that's why it's a balance in terms of like, I'm not saying don't women shouldn't speak about their challenges ever. I
No.
think there's something relatable of like, let's say I'm watching a panel and whoever it is that's inspirational to me shares some challenges that they've had. I can relate and understand, okay, it's not just us. Or I can also be more aware when I am in those situations, like, what's really happening here? Is this
Mhm.
this person do this to everyone, or are they doing it specifically because I'm a woman in an entrepreneurship role? So I think it's helpful in that sense. I think really where it's frustrating is when the entire panel that I'm watching is about
Yes. Yes. And there's 5 women who have done incredible things that we could be asking for very real advice, and they're getting bogged down with like, "So, what was it like the first time you were in a meeting with all men, and what did you say?" And it's like,
which again, tell me that story.
and then?
And then I think it's just that and then. Like
Yeah.
I'm I'm happy to share about times that we get told about, "Oh, how's your loot bag company?" You could probably do kids' birthday parties. I wonder if a 40-year-old man was in the same meeting with a bank, if they're going to be asked about their loot bag business.
We should absolutely tell that story in a second. But yeah, no, I agree. And yeah. And another thing is like, how about we put these amazing women on panels all year round so that they're not overbooked? I can only imagine people that like we know the ones.
Mhm.
They're there every
Every single one.
year.
Mhm.
They are booked and busy, which is like great for them. But how about we just talk to them all year round?
I think there's also something to be said about like you said, putting them on a pedestal, but just more exposure to successful women that have done great things. And if we spend the whole time talking about like all their challenges, like let's speak about what they've done and what they've accomplished and the things that they've done so that more younger women see that
What is
entrepreneurship
possible?
is a possibility and understand that like, hey, maybe I don't need to just be scared off by how all the
Oh,
barriers.
that is a really good point actually, because I have gone to many events where I left feeling like,
Oh,
uh,
why are we doing this?
statistically, I don't think I could do this. Which I don't think is the intention
Yeah,
of like what should be taken away from those sessions, but it gets like that sometimes 'cause it's like, damn, I just heard 12 people talk about how they are the exception to this
barely.
and they barely made it,
Mhm,
and here's why you probably won't. And you just feel deflated after, which is obviously not the goal.
mhm. I have another question for you.
Ooh,
So, this year's theme for International Women's Day is inspiring or inspire inclusion.
hmm.
What does that mean to you?
I'm curious about what that means to them. To me personally, inspire inclusion means understanding and including all aspects of women, all kinds of women, and understanding and accepting and calling in women in all of their many forms, and kind of understanding like that there's so many other aspects of a person that need to be taken into account when we're talking about inclusivity, whether that's gender or race or who knows. There are a million things that need to be taken into account that impact how women show up or impact what resources women do or don't have access to. Um, and I'm assuming that that is what the kind of call to action is with that theme. And they're like, so how do you, a whoever woman, how does this
Black
impact?
female mom.
Oh God, I get that a lot. And it's like, I am a Black woman and a mom and a woman and a founder, and I get all of that, but, like, there are many conversations that can be had that are, I don't know, speak to other aspects of me.
Mhm,
Inclusion's a really good theme. I think that there is a lot of, um a lot of companies are looking to check boxes these days, unfortunately, and they don't take into account that women are entire people, and they don't understand the intersections of the different things, the different aspects of their persons,
mhm,
and how those impact um, the resources that they have or the things that they have access to or, you know, where they're coming from, just from a life standpoint. So inspire inclusion is a good theme, and I think that many companies in particular are pretty late to the party with that. Diversity has been, uh, you know, a really big talking point for a long time, and diversity is not good enough. I think inclusion is
Mhm.
kind of a level deeper, and a
That's a
lot
good point.
of companies can do better.
Yep. I think aside from like I agree with everything you said. I think to add on to that, it to me should mean like come as you are in terms of like inspire inclusion of like bringing people in with the unique superpowers that they have or quirks or whatever it may be. And I think with women or any minority group, there's a lot of like societal expectations that people feel, which prevents them from showing up as they are, especially in a work setting.
Mhm,
Um, and it's tricky to do because it's a person to person thing that like each person needs to have a safe space to show up as they are. Um, and I think from like a business relationship standpoint, as a manager, that's something that we try and keep in mind. And we can always be doing a better job of it. But like in our quarterly conversations where we try and give people a space and it's what's your unique superpower? How can we better support you to show up as you? Because if
mhm.
everyone's trying to just fit in and do what they think showing up how they think they should be showing up, businesses are also just losing out on the opportunity to like really work with people in a way that feels natural to them or like actually take advantage of the best part of the people that they have on their team.
Yeah, you're losing out on a lot of authenticity
Mhm.
by, like, even if you're not, um, actively, promoting a culture where people should act a certain way. Like, I think we've all worked at places where
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, I am putting on
Mhm.
a work Vanessa today."
Yep.
Even if it's not that, if you're not actively trying to make sure that everybody on your team feels heard and seen, um, then people are just gonna mask the parts that they feel like they need to
Mhm.
mask, which is unfortunate because you're missing out on so much authenticity and, like, the opportunity for your corporate culture to become what it is organically.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I agree. I think my favorite question that we ask in those conversations is, are there any parts of your identity that you feel we could s
Be better
feel,
support.
yeah, that could be better supported? On our team, honestly, people don't tend to answer that question. I think it's a pretty big question.
Mhm.
Um, but I do like that we ask it, and we ask it continuously because I wanna make sure that people know that they can be who they are with
Even
us.
when people share what part of their identity is being supported, I think that's helpful too because
Yeah.
that allows us to be more intentional about and be aware of like what we should continue to support or ways that we can like bring in what they think their superpower is that we might not have noticed or that they really enjoy working on in a different way
Mhm.
and just be more intentional about everything.
I agree.
Yeah.
Are there any aspects of your personality that you feel or identity that you feel we could better
Better
support?
support? No, I don't think so. I think I've like definitely felt that before. I know when I first became a manager, that was a big thing for me of like I was so buttoned up and so like the corporate
For sure.
way of like what I thought I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I remember my old boss being like, "Uh, loosen up a little, like you're fine. You don't need to be so serious." And I was like,
I'm picturing,
"Oh,
like when you talk about buttoned up, I'm just picturing, like, a stock image of a girl
how was
in
that?
corporate.
How was that?"
Like, the little rectangle glasses and
Yeah,
pinstriped shirt and a
definitely had a
tight bun.
pit well, I always wear a bun.
Yeah, but, like, a slicked back
Yeah,
tight bun.
yeah. I
Hilarious.
and like I feel like we are typically like goofier people that like in day to day our employees do hear us like just shooting the shit all the time. So I think that I was like just not showing up as I was. And
And
I
that's exhausting.
Yeah, yeah. We did, and they call it something different at every,
Oh,
like,
the DISC
place of work.
assessment?
Yeah, the DISC assessment. Ours is called something else, but basically, like, what color is your personality, and your, like, how do you show up to work? How do you show up in your real life? And they would measure your, like, kind of conscious level and subconscious level, and, like, one of them is what you're putting on at work, one of them is just how you are. And the first time I did that, the difference between the two, I remember the facilitator, it was like a 2-day training. He's like, "You must be exhausted." He's like, "This literally is a measurement of your exhaustion."
Mhm,
Which, like, I was exhausted because I'm playing up certain parts that I think I need to be as a manager, and playing down other parts, that, like, might just be who I am. And
mhm,
when you do that, like, for example, I have to turn up my green sometimes at work, which I am more naturally green at home.
mhm,
But, like, bringing in certain aspects can be so tiring.
mhm.
And when we started the business, obviously we did almost the same thing with one of our leadership coaches and with our whole team. And when I looked at those results, like, at work and, like, actual real personality thing was so much more aligned and so much closer. And I can feel the difference so
For
much.
sure.
Like, I think when you look at burnout, of, like, where have I been on the scale,
Mhm,
I was so burnt out in my last job by the time that I left. And I almost think that, like, entrepreneurs should work a corporate job that burns them out before they start their business, because that, I think, made both of us so conscious of
mhm.
how we were showing up, be so intentional about the business that we built,
For sure.
so that we don't burn out. And, like, since starting the business and, like, just really showing up as myself, and having a business partner that, like, allows me to, encourages me, and having a relationship that I do feel like we can show up as ourselves, it's just made everything so much more sustainable.
Mhm.
And I feel like, going back to the inspiring inclusion topic, it's like businesses will benefit from inspiring inclusion, because your employees
100%.
can show up themselves and not be exhausted.
Yeah. So and that is a really great point, and this is why representation is so important. I suspect that had you had more women managers and executives to look up to in your previous role who were comfortable and being authentically themselves, you probably wouldn't have felt so that you had to play up such specific aspects. And it's not to say that the other women that you had worked for before, it was their fault, but it's like, if you think about people modeling behaviors of executives and managers, who are most executives and managers? People are modeling this, like, masculine energy and
Mhm,
super red, um, assertive and not aggressive, but assertive
mhm,
and firm, and if that's not naturally you, it is exhausting. I don't even try because there's not
mhm,
that bone in my body, but I can only imagine, and that is why it is so important to see women showing up as themselves and excelling as
mhm,
themselves, to, like, know that you can make it being the way that you are. It's so important. I It's, like, very sad to me to know that people feel that they need to act like the male managers that they see because they see them excelling and they're like, "Well, it worked for them."
mhm.
Yeah.
I think, and I've had that situation where I came in feeling like I had to act a certain way, and, like, my manager, like, vice president at the time, who I was directly reporting into, is the one that disarmed me. And, like,
Mhm,
she's the one that showed up authentically herself every day. And people, like, followed her. Like,
mhm.
people really loved her for it. And I was like, okay, you can do that. Like, I don't
Yes.
need to show up as this corporate, like, buttoned up person, stock photo. Um, I can just like be myself and hopefully, and that's not to say that sometimes you don't need to have the emotional intelligence to play up certain parts of yourself
100%.
and show up differently in different conversations. If
Mhm.
I'm speaking to like red, I know that I can bring out my natural red more easily and that person can accept it better. But it's just understanding like how to come to a conversation in the right way with the part of yourself that will connect with that person well.
Yeah, I agree. It's crazy. I don't know, just going back to the topic of, like, obviously obviously, men dominate most areas of business. Statistically, white men are in more positions of power, in more board seats, in more everything as it relates to business. And I know one of my, somebody in my family literally, like, took up golf specifically so that she could be more, like,
Have a seat at the table.
have a seat at the table, um, when it came to different, like, whatever she was trying to accomplish at work.
Mhm.
But she literally had to learn a new sport because she was like, "Oh, this is where they're having
Yeah,
these great conversations."
yeah.
Which is, like, not so much about representation, but it's about inclusion that's, like, you cannot put, um, a corporate policy around that type of inclusion. It's like
Mhm,
boys club is boys club, you know?
mhm.
Which is a whole other thing.
I have a question for you.
Giver.
So, trying to take our advice of sharing a problem, but sharing something that might be helpful to other people.
Mhm.
Let's go back to the example of the loot bags, which I'll let you tell the story.
Mm.
And then what I will challenge you to do is look at what we did in that situation. But is there any like advice that you would give people of like maybe what we could have done or something that would have been helpful to push our business's needle forward in that situation?
Okay. So the story of the loot bags. Olivia and I, about 2 or 3 months into our business, we hadn't been very far, but we had some sales. Say we had I think we thought we were balling with, like, $2,000 in
Yeah.
sales. We were like, "There is no stopping us." We had a meeting with an investment bank. Is that what they do?
It's like barely an investment
It's like a
bank.
business bank,
A business bank that like is kind of funded by the government ish.
government adjacent,
Yeah.
but they essentially fund like, they specialize in finding different funding options, loan options, whatever, for businesses in
Small
Canada.
businesses, startups.
Well, they just fund all kinds,
True.
but they have a lot that are geared towards small
I guess who we
businesses.
were talking to would have been specifically
Yes,
for small business.
exactly. Olivia and I, if you listen to episode 1, Olivia and I had always set out to do corporate gifting. We wanted to do it at scale, and coming from my more, uh, tech startup background, we always knew that we wanted to build a platform, become a tech-enabled gifting business. So, from the beginning, the B2C sales that we were doing were very much like a means to an end. It was kind of just what we started with, and we knew that we wanted to do bigger things very quickly. Um, we had this vision that was and that is still
Same vision.
shockingly very
Mhm.
close to the vision that we had or that we have now. And we had a meeting with a representative of this small business or business bank here in Ottawa. We had a meeting. We explained to her our vision for building out a robust, seamless B2B corporate gifting platform with all of these integrations. And this is the vision that we have, and this is why it matters. This is what people are already spending on corporate gifts every year, and this is the market potential. It's huge. We spent probably 20 minutes um, sharing our vision, which we were and still are very excited about. And we'll talk about playing small later. But we we had a conversation with ourselves before that meeting of like, okay, we have to go in there and get her excited about this plan that we have. So Olivia and I did the whole spiel. It went really well, I thought. And at the end, when we were talking about different funding options, or when we got to the end, when we expected to talk about different funding options or any advice that she had, um, her first question was, "Oh, there's a lot of moms who are really busy in this area that we were close to, and you might want to consider doing loot bags for kids' birthday parties." Which
In a neighborhood.
in in a specific neighborhood in Ottawa, it's like she basically said in that sentence, like, "I didn't really listen to anything that you said, but this might be a cute business idea for you girls." And I raged. I
I won't give you money for it, but I think you should go on Etsy, Facebook groups, and make these loot bags. Which, like, not saying that's not a great,
it's just
like, side hustle for someone. It's just not the vision that we
diametrically opposed
expect.
to what we just explained.
Not what we
Not
expect.
even close. Not even
We came
like
there with like there's a $4.4 billion market size, not of loot bags. Are you listening, man?
no, she was not listening.
She's
And
not.
she was just seeing us, I think. She was seeing us and projecting her vision of what we could do in that moment, and that was so crushing. And I always think of, like, the Michael Jordan meme when he's like, "And I guess you could say I took it personally." Because,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, did that light a fire. Not to not even to her directly, because I don't think we ever followed up with
No.
my advice,
Mhm.
if we're talking about practical things to do, is, like, walk out of that room politely. There's 2 routes that I would take,
Mhm.
and honestly, we could still take them, it doesn't really matter. Um, the the more feisty Vanessa, now, would probably email her and CC somebody kind of important as
Mhm.
well, and just, like, let her know what happened. Just remind her what she said, and then tell her how it's going and how
Uh,
wrong she was.
mhm.
In a, like, nice little update email kinda way.
Mhm. Yep.
That's
Like,
one.
remember that time you thought we were doing loot
But hey,
bags? That was
I know it's
$1,000,000 in
been
sales.
4 years since we connected, and you suggested that we, shift our business model into a loot bag company. I
There's
just wanted to
barely
let you
even
know that we just hit $3,000,000 in sales, and we couldn't have done it without you pissing us off that day. CC your boss. Or the more nice option in that would be to, like, not be so offended by what she said and just incessantly follow up with her, and in order
show.
to get what we wanted, to show her that we were doing the things that she didn't think we could do. Mind you, thankfully, we had other options and other people, and that one conversation had no real impact on us aside from pissing us off in that moment. So, it was fine. We didn't follow up because we didn't really need the funding anyway. I think we were just, like, looking to see what
Mhm.
was out there. Um, but that was a great first, "Oh, people are not hearing us."
Yeah.
That was, like, the first one, I think, too.
And it's happened so much since. I think what we've
Oh,
learned since is, like, expect to not be heard, and in terms of practical advice, power through the not being heard, and keep reiterating the accomplishments, which is disappointing, obviously, but that's
yeah.
fine. They have a job to do too, and they need to be giving money to people that they see potential and see traction and all of that. But being so, like, I don't know if forthcoming is the word, but like before someone is asking for it, you need
Loud.
to be loud about your accomplishments.
Mhm.
And I think whether that is because we are women and a lot of other reasons, tend to not be tend to be a little bit more modest about that, in terms of, like, not naturally leading with
Mhm.
those, accomplishments, and that's something that I've learned to be helpful is lead with the
Yes.
accomplishment to get their attention, because until
Mhm.
we say how much we've sold, no one is listening.
Yes. Olivia and I, we did a pitch competition in Las Vegas about a year and a half ago, and we I'm a marketer. I like to tell stories. I like to conjure up emotions in people, So for me, if I had my way with a pitch, it would be like a lovely 2-minute story where I just leave with you feeling warm and fuzzy. Um, we did our pitch competition, which obviously our pitch was not that. We edited it a lot and there was really pertinent information in there, and a really good pitch in my opinion. But somebody at the end, a woman came up to us and was like, "That was really good." And she's like, "You should lead with your revenue." She's
Mhm.
like, "You got to your revenue like 6 slides in. Start with that so that people are listening from the beginning." And I was like, "Damn, you're right.
Yep.
We definitely should." And it sucks that that's the case because, hey, I'm standing here with a mic, so you should probably be listening to me. Why are you at a
Why are
pitch
you
competition
why are
if you're
you
not
sitting in
listening
this
to me?
audience?
But
Yeah.
sure, I guess I'll start with my revenue. So, yeah, leading with accomplishments, getting more comfortable with talking about your accomplishments and, like, being a little bit shameless in like, vocalizing your success is huge, and we've learned that we've heard it reiterated to us from
Mhm.
so many people, especially really important women in our lives who have been like, "Chad's gonna exaggerate.
Yeah.
I need
Chad's
you to
Chad's
exaggerate."
12xing what his honestly, more than that.
And we know Chads in real life that do that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it's
And then
crazy.
we do our projections and we're like,
Ooh.
literally, I can't add this $10 onto the projection. I don't know how I'm selling it. Like, our
Yeah.
projection is what we have
Yes.
mathematically counted to be it.
Mhm.
And not everyone does that. And I get why if two people walk into a room, like, we need to be accountable to understanding the landscape of if two people walk into a room and are asking for money and one is saying that they're going to make this much, whether they do or they don't, which one looks more promising?
Yeah.
And some people are more realistic because they've been through seeing that that projection didn't actually become what they said it was going to be, but these, like, conservative but ambitious projections end up being a little bit more realistic.
Mhm.
So thankfully we've, like, started to find a balance of that and started allowing ourselves to think bigger. Um, but it's the reality of the situation.
It's work.
Yep.
So our biggest piece of advice, and this comes from, Pollyanna Reed, one of my mentors, is always like, "I need to put my Chad hat on in negotiation, in pitching, in speaking engagements." She's like, "I'm walking out there like I own shit because I have to, because
Mhm.
that's how you demand attention and respect, unfortunately, is, like, fake it,"
Mhm. 'Cause
which
to men, it's just, like,
they assume.
inherent.
Yeah, it's
They
kind
get
of
it.
crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that's the biggest takeaway is, like, be and
Be
also,
bold.
I will say, with especially when it comes to projections, a lot of it is, like, when we're speaking with different, I don't know, people who could potentially give us money or, I don't know, potential mentors or whoever that may be, is, like, they also do want to see the confidence.
Mhm.
So there is a
Mhm.
balance between, like, being really conservative with your numbers. I think, one somebody that we met with once was like, "I don't wanna see you set targets and then, um, oversell by a whole bunch because then I just think you were sandbagging and, like, being
Exactly.
shy. I don't want that."
No,
He's like, "I want you to set realistic but, like,
be a
confident
stretch
numbers."
goal. Exactly. It's like it's a stretch goal.
Yeah.
It's not a, like, how in the world would I ever hit this goal?
Mhm.
But it's pushing yourself to something that is harder than you think you can achieve.
Yeah.
Um, and but making a plan that actually makes sense for you to be able to try and get to that point.
Mhm.
Should we talk about thinking small?
Yes.
We've gotten a lot better.
Yeah,
So something and I think we'll probably have an entire episode on mentorship, but
for sure.
we have
Probably many.
incredible mentors and have had incredible mentors that we have really pushed ourselves to, like, take advantage of the incredibly intelligent people around us, to support us as we built our business. And we started noticing a theme of, like, why do these people believe in us more than we believe in us? Are
Like,
they
a lot more.
like just trying to hype us up. And we kept trying to, like, suss it out. Like, are you trying to trick
Are
us?
you gassing us up or are you a little bit dumb?
Yeah,
Like,
like,
what are
we
you
didn't
seeing
believe
here?
it for a long time. I honestly remember having a conversation. We were both on Zoom, had a conversation with a mentor. I walked around the parking lot behind our warehouse for an hour talking to you, being
Remember
like,
I had to go for a run?
"Yeah." The adrenaline in our body of like, "Wait, wait, wait,
Whoa,
wait, wait.
this
What are
guy
we
thinks
doing?
we can do
This
it.
guy thinks
Whatever we
we
want.
whatever we want.
He knows we
What
can do it.
like, he's telling us we can like,
Oh,
why don't we think we can do it?"
yeah.
And I think since then, and other conversations of, like, other women saying, like, "Think bigger,
Bigger, bigger,
bigger,
bigger.
bigger. Why
Shout
are
out to
you"
Janice.
Yeah, shout out to Janice.
Love that woman.
I think and it's not even delusionally bigger that they're encouraging
No,
us to think.
it's just like, think about where you are right now and think of the opportunities. Like, think of the opportunity that you have if you zoom your vision out a little bit more. Why can't you take this? Why
Mhm.
can't you do this? Why can't you open up this model? Whatever. And it's like, true.
So my question to you is, why do you think, and I think we've gotten so much better at it, but why do you think we were thinking so small? Not even so small, but
Yeah.
too small.
So I think there's different levels of small.
Mhm.
I specifically remember when we first started our business, calculating how many gifts we would need to sell in a year in order to pay us, like, basically no money,
Mhm.
like, to make money.
Yep.
And it was like 1,200 gifts or something like that, or maybe less, I don't know. It was, like,
What?
way less.
Yeah.
And we are like, "How do we" I don't even know how we can do that. I think this is with anything, but I think you kind of need to, like, prove to yourself little by little what you're capable of in order to believe that you can achieve the big thing, the really big thing. There's that, and then there's also, like, unraveling what is possible the deeper you go into something. So, like, when we set out our corporate gifting business, we had a pretty clear vision of what it was or what it could be, and we were headed in that direction. But as we grew the business, we realized, like, oh, there's actually this need, and oh, there's actually this whole market that we hadn't thought of, and there's so many different layers that make it a bigger opportunity.
Mhm.
And I think that those two things are the biggest. And then third, like we talked about, is the being really conservative, being a little bit shy, and not wanting to overcommit, um, or to be held responsible for lying to people, because our word, like,
Means a lot.
my word is everything. So I don't wanna tell people that I'm gonna make $8 million by next year if I know that I'm tracking toward 2.3 or whatever that might be. And we've learned from people, like, be bold in your projections, um, because it'll get people on board,
But
but be reasonable.
be able to back them up.
That's the biggest thing. And
Yeah.
I think that that's, like, the most, um when people talk about, like, bringing Chad energy into a situation, a lot of times Chad energy is not great because it's, like, a ridiculous projection or estimate or whatever it may be with zero thought.
Mhm.
And it's like, "Oh, well, the total addressable market is this, and we can get this much market share." And it's like, "Well, how?" And the how is not thought about, and we
Mhm.
think a lot about the how,
Yep.
which is to our detriment sometimes.
But I think that's why when we get to a conversation where we are being what we consider to be bolder, it's backed up, and that's why we are able to quickly gain trust of people that we're talking to, because they
Mhm.
know you didn't just pick a number. Like, you
Yes.
got to a number,
Yes,
which I think makes a
absolutely.
big difference.
And, like, you can it's like we we will get to the bigger numbers later.
Mhm.
We know we need to take X, Y, and Z steps first.
Mhm.
Um,
Why do you think, like, historically, Chad energy exists in terms of, like, male-female dynamic? Like, why do you think women aren't naturally showing up with Chad energy?
because they didn't have space to have Chad energy. We didn't have bank accounts or jobs. We
Not
couldn't do
not that
anything
long ago.
without husbands for a very long time. There's no room for us to have Chad energy. We were Yeah, that's all.
Without
It's
crying.
yeah. There's no room for us to have Chad energy, and there's like, when we talk about Chad energy, it's like there's a system that is rewarding Chads, you know? They didn't
Mhm,
just emerge out of nowhere, and, like, it had to work for somebody, and that is how that happened,
mhm,
and we're seeing the repercussions of that in the market today is like, oh, 10 years ago, a lot of Chads made a lot of bold predictions, and venture capital is very different now from what it was
mhm,
even 5 years ago, because many Chads took big swings and had no plans. Um, I think we're just more cautious and realistic in general,
mhm,
sometimes to a fault, but I think that that's why. It's just like, I don't wanna be held accountable for the lie that I told you to your face.
mhm. I think we just need more women creating the space. Like you said, like, we didn't have the space to have Chad energy. It's like whatever the new name is for Chad, of, like, taking Chad, backing it up with, like, a real plan and showing other women, because Chad saw this work for another Chad and saw someone like Chad do this and said, "That worked for him. Let
Yeah.
me try it."
Also, like, there are Chads who I don't know what you would call it, but, like, Bill probably today was a Chad in
Mhm.
1980, and he's
Yeah.
funding Chads because
Yeah, it's
Chads
not
get him
new.
excited, you know?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that's, like, a whole system that's in place.
Mhm,
So, whatever we need to be is, like, the version of Bill in a few years is, like, funding women who are realistic but bold
mhm, and have a plan.
and have a plan.
And know
Absolutely.
what part of the plan they don't have. Like,
Mhm.
this is the gap in our plan. This is how we're who we're bringing on or what we're doing to, like, fill that gap of it's not realistic to have your entire plan of how I'm gonna become a $40 million company. Yeah, I don't have the whole plan, but
Mm-mm.
here's my vision, here's the strategy, and here's the gaps of, like, what I need to fill in, and that's what builds the trust of, like, someone knowing that you can get there.
Mhm.
And I think if we, like, showcase more women doing that, we can show more women that they can be bolder and they can take up the space that hasn't historically been taken up. And
Mhm.
there, like, not to say there are not women
Killing it.
already killing it and paving the way in that sense and being examples for us, um,
For sure.
but we can always use more, and we need to hold ourselves accountable to setting that example also.
Mhm. But yeah, there's lots of work to do.
Yeah.
So let's get it all done on International Women's Day.
One day, 8
Um,
hours, change the system.
'Kay,
How about we end the podcast with each celebrating a woman.
I'll cry.
Okay.
I'm crying already. I'm crying.
Oh.
Finish the question.
A woman that's been, like, inspirational or
I'm crying.
tell us.
What?
You're just gonna make
Finish
me
the
cry
question.
because you know the question. Like, a woman that's been
Continue.
inspiring. Like, let's,
Okay.
like, go
That we
back
know?
to at the beginning of something that we think, like, should be a part of International Women's Day, which is, like, the celebration of women and how far women have come.
Mm.
Yeah, a woman that you know
No. I'll
or that you
cry.
don't.
'Cause then I have to say my mom. And, like, she deserves it. I have to say it because she is the one.
Yeah.
Um, my mom.
Why your mom?
Stop.
You can say whoever you want
I know, but
or
I'm
a woman in
literally have
business.
to be my mom. Um
Okay, what's a business relationship
Mhm.
that you've had with a woman that you've worked with, had as a boss, seen in the workplace, whatever it may be, that's shaped a bit about who you are or been inspirational to you?
I have worked many, many, many jobs throughout my life. Um, and actually, that's so strange. So my manager at the first tech startup that I worked at, a company called DubDub, RIP. Her name was
RIP is crazy.
RIP, they can't all make it. Um, Fahima Anwar. She was the marketing director of the company. I don't really remember, but she hired me, and we did our thing for the year and a half or 2 years that I worked there before I quit, which was, like, 3 months before the company went under. Um, she had such a profound impact on me in a way that, like, I didn't even have I never really had an opportunity. I worked corporate jobs, but, like, I worked in a call center, so I wasn't really exposed to, like, corporate
Mhm.
broism the way that many women who, like, go far in their careers are. But my first tech startup job, I she just set such an example of, like, "I'm me, and I'm doing this thing, and, like,
Mhm.
it is what it is." So, first of all and I love her so much, but, like, I showed up for the job interview, and I showed up, everybody was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm here to see Fahima." They're like, "She's working from home today." So they called her, and she's like, "Oh, shit," and got in her car and drove from Guelph because she totally forgot about the interview. I had
Aw.
to go home and then just walk back, like, 2 hours later. So, anyways, but she is like she set an example of being yourself fully in your work and bringing, like part of it had to do with the company that we were in, and, like, the culture of the company, but she was, like, playing the game in terms of corporate, like, "We're gonna go to this networking event, we're gonna host this and get into this whatever. We're gonna meet these people and do these things and kinda move and shake," but she's like, "But I am me the whole time, and
Mhm.
everybody that I work with knows what they're getting when they talk to me. I am here because I can do the work and I can do it well, but I'm not gonna pretend to be any different than who I am," and she was like she held her team to that too, and she defended us in times when, like, maybe people were expecting a different type of attitude within a space or whatever, but she's like, "My team is my team, and I chose them because they are who they are,"
Mhm.
and that gave me a lot of space to be myself, and confidence at a time when it was probably very, like, formative for me at in my where I was in my career at the time. So after that, I went into every job interview the same way, which was like, "I'm bringing my personality to this place because you need it."
Mhm.
Like,
You're welcome.
it will be yeah, like, I came in there like, "This is what I'm bringing to the company," because you can get anybody to execute the skills that I have, but, like, this is who I am, and she just we never even had a conversation about that, it's just, like, that was the vibe that she gave off all the time, and so, much respect to her for that.
I've never heard that story.
Yeah, I don't really, like because of the time of working at that place was so chaotic, I don't really think about it that much, but when I think about, like I said, just, like, formative times, had a really could have been had it been another manager, I could have
Gone in a different
gone
direction.
the stock photo corporate girly, but
Mhm.
it was just, like yeah, she was so cool, and, like, she also had a very good and this is probably to my detriment a little bit, but she had a really great attitude about, like, we're gonna get done what we can get done, and, like, there's no point in stressing out over the stuff that we know can't happen in a reasonable time frame.
Mhm.
She's like, "Some of the ships you have to just let sail, and you'll get it next time," kinda
Mhm.
thing, and that just her, like, ability to be relaxed in a job that was very demanding taught me, like, "Oh, I can still have fun here while getting shit done."
That's great.
Love her. How about you?
I would say mine is my old, VP that I worked for, Ash Gamble, that I talked about earlier. Um, she was just someone that was, like, so fiercely loyal in terms of she's talking to the president, like, everyone knows that Ash has her team's back,
Mm.
like, no
Mhm.
matter what, and I think that creates a space where you can make mistakes and you can experiment because she's there to, like, protect her team. You always knew like, people always said, "You know when our team walked into a room, like, you know who's on our team," because there's, like, a closeness and a bond that I think she created by showing up her authentic self, and I think that helped me, like I was mentioning, like, show up authentically also and bring that into what we do now, and just kind of gave the permission of that, um which was important. And I think also just setting an example is so important because I saw her going to the like more assertive men that were the president, the CEO, whatever, and defending what she believed in and making a case for what she thought was important and challenging the status quo, which I think shaped me to feel like there is space to do that.
Mhm.
Um, in a place where like it can easily feel like, these people are bigger than me, more powerful than me. I should just kind of sit back.
Mhm.
Um, so that was, I would say, she like definitely changed and inspired me in terms of like how to show up at work.
Do you have any advice for women who are kind of the way that we described how we were at the time that we started the business? Um, Maybe really career focused, growth oriented, purpose driven. Do you have any advice for them in terms of just steering their career? Or do you have any advice for them to go about building a career that is impactful to them?
I think something that I've learned from you is like being intentional about everything that you do. And that's everything that we do as a business, but everything that anyone is doing in their career is like stepping back and thinking about what you're building and what you're working towards rather than just like going wherever things take you. I
Mm,
think at the beginning like you go wherever things take you because you need those experiences and you need to like get a taste of different things, but during that process like what what have you learned, what do you like, what do you not like, and what do I want the future for me to look like, whether that be future in terms of work life balance, in terms of your role title, in terms of um, how you show up to work, who you look to for inspiration, but just like actually being intentional about the relationships that you're building and the directions that you're going in is something that like I've seen us do here and I've seen the impact of it. And I think that could be helpful and applicable to anyone. What about you?
my biggest piece of advice for women who are like have a feeling that their career is going to be something that matters to them for a long time is to look at the people across the table from you and find friends at work who are like real friends. I cannot tell you how many people I have like taken with me from every job that I've had who have had such a big impact on like every aspect of my career, whether it's people who became our first customers or people who I can now turn to for advice or people who just like we shared a shitty job together and have so much to relate to on that level
We're just
and
in
just
your corner.
in my corner and like know what I'm capable of and can talk me out of like feeling like I can't do something.
Speak about you in the rooms that you're not in.
References, opportunities. Like I another shout out to Pollyanna, my one of my very good friends and mentors, but she always is talks about lifting while you climb and like giving people opportunities that maybe don't fit for you but might be a good fit for them, being really generous with sharing other people's accomplishments and speaking their names in rooms when they're not there. Because that stuff will come back to you and it pays off in ways that you cannot imagine. So think like I understand that your career when you're starting out can feel competitive, but I promise you that it is not. Focus on like building authentic relationships with the people who are in the same position as you now because they will be doing something else eventually and so will you and there are a million ways that you can help each other out.
I love that. So let's wrap up.
You know what is crazy? In
What?
all this talk, we did not really talk about the fact that like how motherhood impacts being a woman in business. Just not.
No, I mean, it's a big part
No, I
of it.
know, but it's like we just
Wait, that needs to maybe be an episode in itself. Oh, it decided.
well, that wraps up our International Women's Day episode. To be clear, we think that it is a great day to celebrate the achievements and accomplishments of women. So, women who are listening, I hope you are finding a way to celebrate yourselves. Other folks who are listening, I hope you're finding a way to celebrate the women around you. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.